Hello, I'm Jay, owner of Volunteer Audio in Oliver Springs, Tennessee, and I'm making a video to go over some of the latest radios in the Harley Davidson world. All right, so we've been showing you the new Soundstream Reserve V2 radio, and we've got a lot of requests to do a comparison video amongst some of the other options. So today, we've got a 2019 and up Harley Davidson GTS factory radio, the Soundstream Reserve V2, the latest from Soundstream. And the first radio ever from Diamond Audio, it's the MSHD14 for 14 and up Harleys also. We're going to do a couple tests. I'm going to put these through the same tests that we do as a company to decide if we're going to carry or not carry a specific product. Now, I catch a lot of flack sometimes because I don't carry every brand. And so some people think that our reviews are a little leaned one-sided or another. Now, I'll tell you, as an independent retailer, we do a lot of research. We do a lot of tests. And we try to make sure that everything we sell you is the best at whatever price point. Now here we are testing again another new radio in comparison to one that we already carry, so we can decide if it's worth bringing in or not bringing in, and should you buy it or not for the price point. So let's go through these tests that we're going to do. I'm going to do a quick boot test. We're going to see how long it takes for the radio to start up. You may ask, why are we going to do this? Well, a lot of times your group is ready to ride, everybody's starting their bikes up, and we want to know how long it's going to take to get your radio booted, your navigation brought up, or your music playing, so you're ready to leave with the rest of the crew. Now, this was a huge problem on the older Harley Davidson GT radio. It's about a 3-minute Bluetooth connection time. So we don't want you to get stuck with a really slow radio. We're also going to look at the screen size, the vibrance, and the brightness, because it's really important, especially you Roadglide guys. You got an angle issue with the sun that is bright enough for you to see while riding down the road. We're going to test things like thumb controls and how well they work, so while you're riding, we can determine how safe it is to go down the road and change the options, because there are many, many features in these radios. We want to know which one is better while we're riding. Now, I'm also going to do some other tests. We're going to check some things like the internal amp output, compare how strong each one is in comparison to each other. We're also going to check the RCA pre-outs and how strong they are, such as if you're going to add an amplifier. There are many things we're going to go over in this video. I'm going to show you a lot about the features of each one, and I'm going to help you make the right decision on which one is right for your Harley Davidson Roadglide, Streetglide, Electroglide, or Ultra. So watch the rest of the video, and I'm sure we'll help you make that decision. All right, so test number one, we're going to check the boot speed of each radio. We're going to see how fast that internal processor is, how quick it connects to your phone. We don't want you to be the last one holding everybody up that's ready to pull out, so you can get your phone connected to your radio. Now, we're going to be using the GTS radio as part of our test. It does not have wireless Apple CarPlay, so we're going to have it boot to its factory navigation. We're going to have the Soundstream Reserve V2 and the Diamond Audio MSHD14 load to wireless CarPlay, so we can see just how quick that phone's connected and up for either nav or music. All right, let's get them fired up. All right, so Soundstream's off to a good start. We've got video on screen already. Diamond is booted. GTS seems to be running roughly in second. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit accept on our GTS. It's still not fully loaded, even though it looked like it was doing well. Soundstream's already connected to our phone, and boom, Apple CarPlay is up, live, and wireless. Diamond is still going across the front of the screen. Oh, we got nav up on GTS. We got FM radio on Diamond. It's now starting to connect to your phone. All right, so we're bringing up a phone. All right, so we're up. So we have a clear-cut winner here. Soundstream was lightning fast in comparison to the other two. The GTS radio loaded nav after the fact. It was pretty quick, but it still took longer than the Soundstream, and the Diamond was in dead last. So Eric's going to put the time of each one of these radios above it to let you know how long the boot time was, and let's move on to our second test. All right, so this test is going to be really important, especially for you guys riding your Roadglides. You've got an angle issue with that factory radio that makes it very hard to see even the factory GTS with the sun directly on it, mainly when it's over your shoulder, reflecting off and into your eyes. So we need a very, very bright display, so on those sunny days, we can see our radio. So I want to do a couple things. I want to show that we're not fudging this test in any way or making something not work right. We're going to go into our Diamond radio and we're going to check the brightness of our screen. It is all the way up. So it's all the way up. I don't see a daytime or nighttime mode, but it's on its full brightness. We'll do the same thing on our Soundstream. Let's check our brightness. It's all the way up and in daytime mode. So we're going to go back to Apple CarPlay because I want to compare two of the same screens. So two different phones, same screen brought up on either one. Now you will notice that huge 8.3-inch screen. Now, no way do either of the other radios win when it comes to size of screen, because at 8.3, that's the biggest possible screen that you could fit in this Harley chassis. Beautiful part, as you notice, the actual face of each one of these are the same size. So there's no modification to the bike with any of these. They all bolt in and plug in. They're fully plug and play. You don't need any kind of new fairing. Now these all fit 2014 to 2023 models. It's not going to fit the new body style 23.5 and up with the Skyline radio. It's also not going to fit your 1998 to 2013 Streetglide or Roadglides. So 15 and up Roadglides, 14 and up Streetglides, it's going to bolt right in. All right, so both manufacturers claim between these two radios to have a 1000 nit brightness level. That's how bright the backlighting of the display is. Now here, I don't know how well you can see it, there is a significant brightness difference between the Soundstream and the Diamond. I mean, it feels like it's twice as bright on the Soundstream radio. Now Soundstream also has a QLED screen, which is very, very high definition with a quantum film on it. That quantum film makes it more vibrant, the colors pop, and you can definitely tell a big difference. I'll also tell you, as I move back and forth through here, there is a tremendous amount of extra glare seemingly on the screen of the Diamond in comparison of the other two. I don't know if you can see that as Eric moves around with the camera here, but it seems to be that we have quite a bit of glare coming up on that screen. Now I want you to also pay attention to the brightness, because our phone tends to auto change its brightness based on what we're looking at. This screen is not washed out at all in person, but in the phone, when it tries to pick up the brightness of the Diamond, it washes out the screen over here on the Soundstream. All right, so our opinion, and I think you'll see it if you were here in person. I hope you can see it really well in the video. The Soundstream definitely wins in size of screen and total brightness. This is important. We're going to be riding these bikes most likely on pretty sunny days. Now, both of these radios have the ability to actually dim down. So if you're at night, you can dim those down so they're not too bright on you and they're not going to be annoying while you're trying to ride in those evening hours. All right, let's move on to our next test, the power test. All right, so we're ready to do test number 3. So this is going to be the power test. We're going to start with the internal amplifier. I have a factory GTS radio up first. We're doing this because I want to give you a baseline of knowing how much power that stock radio had in your bike to know if there's going to be an improvement or an increase in power between both the Diamond and the Soundstream Reserve radio. So we're going to run our test. It's a little tricky because this is supposed to be in a bike. It's kind of hard to control this radio without thumb controls. There is no volume on the front. So what we've got is we've got a radio flashed for no amp because that's the strongest output. EQ is flat on both bass and treble. Radio's turned all the way up. We're going to run a sine sweep through it at 1 kilohertz. That's going to be track 9. I'll start track 9 at the time of the test. We'll check it on our AD1 dyno at 2 ohm, and we'll see what the max power is we get out of it. Now, I learned a little something the other day. I had a meeting with some guys at Harley Davidson. We did a test a while back on their Roadglide audio system, and Tony Diamore, the guy who built this dyno, he's brilliant. I'm just a guy that follows the directions and knows how to run some of these tools. I didn't build them, but Tony Diamore, who built it, is absolutely brilliant. He used to work at Rockford. And some of the guys there gave me some tips on how they thought when we're testing a radio would get a little more power. So I expect to see more power out of this radio today than we saw when we did it in the bike. There's a lot of loss in the bike between the wiring, between the electrical system. We're going to check it here with our regulated power supply. Everything's powered off the same thing, which is going to give us a little bit less noise, which is going to allow us to go a little higher in power before we hit distortion. So this particular dyno is going to cut off at 1% distortion. So beans are all going to be tested the same way on the same dyno. What we're really looking for is the difference. Is it twice as good? Is it half as good? Things like that. But we're going to see how much wattage we get. We'll compare the other two doing the exact same test on the same day at the same temperature. So all of our variables are the same. Now when I did this test last time in a bike, we did it without the bike running. We did it and we got about 9 watts. We're going to get quite a bit more out of it today from making a few changes. Also, our dyno is being powered off the same power supply that's powering the radio. So there is no separate power supplies that may interfere and add noise. So I'm going to have to somehow or another trick this thing into thinking we've muted it. So to do that, I'm going to go into our audio in our settings menu, and I'm just going to turn the audio for the volume all the way down, and I'm going to get our dyno going. So here's what I'm going to reset the dyno. So we're starting from square one. All right, and now because we do have a power supply running, it's picking up just a little bit of noise. It's showing a couple watts before we even started. But what we're going to do is we're going to start our dyno from the beginning. I want you to see what we've done. So let me exit all the way out. We're going to run what we call a certified dyno run. So let me select that. Let's get there to it. Certified run. We're going to select it as 2-channel. I'm just going to check one of the channels. Oh, we reset for some reason. I probably hit something wrong. 2-channel. We're going to check our impedance as 2 ohm because that's the highest output of this radio. All right, now it says start track 4 or 9. Pause the track and then start the dyno. Now we can't really pause it, but what we're going to do is we're going to back out to our tracks. Track 9, track list. I'm going to change the track and then go back because by doing that, I'm essentially pausing it. So I'm going to go to track 10. I'm going to tell it to start and I'm going to go track 9. So right now we're going to see it's going to start to pick up signal. As it shows signal, that means it's receiving the signal from the radio. It's then going to show what track we're playing, and we're going to watch this power tick up until we hit distortion. That's going to show the maximum output of that radio. All right, so in this test, we actually got 19 watts. That is pretty darn strong for a factory radio. So most MOSFET chips, that internal amp are rated between 15 to 18 watts RMS. We got 19 from the stock radio. Now we know most of our builds, we're doing 100 watts or more RMS to get clear audio at 70, 80 miles an hour. So not everybody's looking for that loud of a system, but most people are looking for more than what we get from the factory radio. So next up, let's throw this diamond radio up here. Let's get it powered up and let's see about that, doing the same test. All right, so we just checked our GTS radio out. If you remember, the maximum output we got out of it was 19 watts. We're doing the same test again, another certified dyno run, 1% total harmonic distortion at 2 ohms. Now, just to make sure everybody's clear and they know what we've done, we're going to go through the whole steps again. So let's go back and let's go to 2 ohm, selected 2 ohm. It says to do track 4 or 9. We're going to hit start dyno. Track 9 is loaded on our radio and is paused. Volume is all the way up. We actually even went into the media and turned up the USB media some to make sure that it had plenty of output. So now let's hit play. It's going to load this sweep. And let's see what our total output is. We're on channel 2. So we got signal, 1 kilohertz, and distortion. Cut off at 10 watts. I've run this test 3 times. 10 is the most we've got. It's been 9 twice, 10 once. So turning the media up gained us 1 extra watt. I want to give it a fair shake. 19 watts with the stock radio in a non-amplified flash. With this particular flash or with this particular radio, we got 10. So about half the power on the internal amp in our diamond radio that we had in that stock GTS radio. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to our next test. That's going to be throwing the V2 up here and seeing what it does. Now, let's back up. I want to remind you, the spec for the radio, I didn't give you that yet. 25 watt RMS, 50 watts peak. That's what they say per channel. We tested 1 channel, we got 10 watts. So let's move on to our next radio. All right, so remember, we got a little bit more wattage out of that GTS radio than we did in the video we did a couple days ago. Part of that was we're running all of our power supplies off of 1 big battery and 1 power supply. So we're not sharing the bike's battery and then our external regulated power supply for our dyno. That's given us a little cleaner input. It's got a little bit more power out of what we've been testing. So that GTS radio did 19 watts. We saw 10 was the best we got out of the diamond radio. I did give you a fair shake, guys. I went in, I made sure your EQ was flat. I even boosted your USB media output in the radio. We went from 9 to 10. So we got a little bit more when we did that. Now, I'm excited to test this radio. So this is the V2 from Soundstream. It's claiming some big numbers. Should be roughly 50 watt RMS. The thing is, when we compared it on the bike the other day in our previous video, we only got 19. So I'm hoping to see an increase in that as well. Understand these tests aren't perfect. There are many ways to test an amplifier, but what we always want to do is test when we're testing multiple components the exact same way. the same track, the same temperature, the same day, the same voltage, the same everything. That way, we're actually comparing apples to apples. So if you were to check with a dyno somewhere else, different voltage, different barometric pressure or temperature, all these things are going to come into play. And we want to make sure that we're testing them all and we give them a really fair shakedown. So let's see what this does. So again, we're on track 9. I've got my volume on my radio all the way up. I also went in, I turned the media up, no need in running multiple runs. We're just going to do it one time. And I've got track 9 paused. Now our dyno, I want to back up and I want to show you what we're doing. So we're going to 2 ohm. That's what we did on the other ones. We're going to be on track 9. We're going to hit start dyno, and then we're going to unpause. Let's see what kind of numbers we get out of it now. We're looking at channel 2 right here. We should be starting to get signal. All right, 30 watts. That's a pretty huge number. Now, let's just look at this for comparison's sake. We just tested 3 radios. We tested them all the same way on the same day. The factory radio did 19 to 20 watts. We're going to say 19. The Diamond radio did 10. So the Diamond radio was about half the power of the stock radio. Our V2 was 3 times the power of the Diamond radio and 50% stronger than the stock radio. What this is going to amount to is, if you thought you needed more power than the stock radio, the V2 radio is going to give you more output. It is going to be louder than stock. The other flip side to this is that Diamond radio is quite a bit weaker than the factory radio, so your total output is not going to be nearly as much. Now, why does this matter? Now, a lot of you are thinking, I'm going to put an amp on it. And we agree. We're going to probably put an amp on about every install we do. But the stronger input we go into our amplifier, the less we have to gain up our amps, the less floor noise is introduced, the better overall it ends up sounding. Less whining, less noise. This is the cleanest radio that Soundstream's ever put out. It's got an 8-layer board. It's got really strong RCA outs. Everything is separated. Awesome. And this is the strongest internal amp we've tested. I think we've got a couple other radios we could test that have touted to have some big numbers that probably wouldn't even compare to the wattage we've seen here today out of this one. Now, the reason I think it's so important to know the power on the Diamond one, they're the only people that are claiming that they have a 10-channel DSP in the radio. And the way they get the 10 channels is 3 sets of RCA out, so front, rear, and sub. And then they say, oh, you can also power additional speakers like tweeters with the internal amplifier. That's going to be out of those speaker leads. Now, we sell a lot of Hertz products. If you watch us, you see that all the time. We use the ST25K Neos, the ST35K Neos. That's the super tweeters that we would be running off of that 8th, 9th, 10th, or 7th channel for that matter, those last 4 channels. And they require about 75 watts of RMS power. And most people are going to power them a lot less than they are their woofers, because those super tweeters are so bright and so loud. We don't want them to be louder than our mids. But 9 watts isn't going to cut it. It's not even going to come close. 30 watts, I still don't think I would try to power it off this internal and think it's going to be loud enough. That's why people tend to put them on a DSP and a second amp. I personally like a coaxial with a tweeter that's matched well for the mid, so it doesn't matter to me as much about those DSP settings in that 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th channel that they're trying to say you can do off that internal power. So for you common folk, the guys that ride their bike, that want an awesome system, we just showed you the power output of the built-in amp. It is going to be stronger than factory if you go with V2. It's going to be about half of the factory output if you go with the Diamond radio. That was done on an AD1 dyno. This wasn't done to try to talk good or bad about a specific company. This is the radio we have chose to sell. The Diamond radio we're not bringing in. We're going to go through some more tests, and I'm going to continue to show you some of the things that made us come up with that decision and how these radios compare and stack up. And the reason we video it, nobody can dispute what we're doing when we show you live, us doing those tests. All right, so next test, we're going to check the RCA outputs of each radio the same way we did here and see what the max clean output is for you guys running amplifiers. All right, so we're starting test number 4, RCA output test. This is important because so many companies in the past have said they had pretty large numbers for their RCA output, and we find out later they're not testing one RCA. A lot of times that number is either all of the RCAs combined or 2 combined. So we've got some big numbers from these 2 companies, both Soundstream and Diamond are saying that they've got some pretty large output. Now let's talk about what they're saying. Diamond on their MSHD14 says it's 6-volt RCAs on each RCA. Now I've seen some other companies do some tests online, and I'll tell you, one of them I was watching, I actually heard something as I was watching it. It was a high-pitched squeal coming from the radio. Now, anytime I hear that squeal, I know that is a capacitor that is yelling at me because it's clipping and it's not a clean signal. So as part of our test, we're going to look at an oscilloscope along with the voltage output of a 1 kilohertz 0 dB tone. So let's talk about our test station, because I want you to know everything we're doing. Our Diamond audio radio is actually powered up by this IntelliSupply from Excess Power that we just used in our power dyno wattage test. There is a large battery down below along with that power supply. We're not connected to power by the wall in any way. We're running a DM RTA. We have RCA cables, good quality ones, running from channel 3 and 4 out of the back of the Diamond radio. That would be our rear channels. We're running those into our balanced line or unbalanced line in on our DM RTA. It is connected by USB over to our laptop, and we're running it right here on the DM RTA app. So we're also running a USB drive. It's an SMD drive that we normally use for our DD1 distortion detector. So 1 kilohertz, 0 dB. Our volume on our radio is all the way up. We also have went into the settings of the radio. Let's go there. And we've made sure our media is set right in the middle. That's where it comes out of the box. Now we'll try turning that up to see if we get bigger numbers, because we want to make sure we give you the best that this radio can do. So back to our USB music. We're going to start playing this track, and it is now playing. So at full volume with that media right there in the middle, we have 2.57 volts. Now we're going to go to our oscilloscope, and we're going to see that the top of our waves and the bottom are clean. So right now we still have clean output. I'm going to go into the settings of the radio while it's playing. I'm going to start bringing that media up, and we're going to see how high we can go before it starts to clip. Let's go and see if we take it all the way up. Where's clip at? So we're going to move our vertical scale to 2. Let's go up a little further. All right, so all the way up, it appears to be relatively clean. Now, it's looking like it's clipped here when we change that scale. Let's bring that scale down. Now, even though it's looking to be clipped, I think that's just because we ran out of room to look at it. So as we go all the way up, we'll see it still looks clean. Let's check out what our voltage is now. So our voltage is 4.99 volts. That's the radio all the way up. That's media maxed out. That is the maximum we're going to get out of this radio all the way up. So 4.98, it's not bad. 4 volts has always been kind of what everybody shot for. Then we've moved into 5 volts, doing 5 volt clean. The problem is it says 6 volts. So don't let that 6 volt number fool you into thinking that it is better than a 5 volt radio. Now, next up, we're going to do the same test with the V2 radio from Soundstream. They also claim to have a big number. Their number is 5 volts. Let's see how it does in comparison. But the most we got, all the way up on media, running our USB track on a 0 dB track, and volume all the way up was 4.96. Now, if you plug both RCAs in, that should roughly double. It did, 9.95. So as you see, one RCA, 4.98 volts. We're going to swap radios. We're going to do the test again. Let's see how they compare. All right, so let's do our test with our V2 radio now. Got it powered up, same regulated power supply, same battery, same RCA cables connected to a DM RTA, connected to the same computer. Now, if I wanted to start here, USB is set to 0. Later, we'll go in and turn it up to see if we can get a little bit more out of it. We also have our equalizer is also set flat, and the volume in our radio, we're going to start taking it up and down as we're doing the test. So we'll start at about volume 25. Let's go to our USB and get this test going. All right, 1 kilohertz 0 dB test. All right, so we're currently seeing 2.37, but we're going to start turning our volume up and see where it goes. Now remember, this radio is said to do 5 volts, so we're going to go all the way up to volume 40. Whoa, volume 40 is 5.03. Our oscilloscope is showing to still be clean. So with volume all the way up and our USB right in the middle, we're We're clean. Now I'm starting to hear just the edge of a capacitor make noise, which means we're right on the verge of getting into some clipping, but we're going to see how much we can get out of it. Let's go ahead and turn it up more. Let's go into our settings. I hit the wrong button because I'm getting used to this radio. And let's go to our volume settings and let's bring our source volume down a little bit. And let's go ahead and bring our USB up. So source level, USB, let's go ahead and bring it up to 5. Now I'm going to go back out of here. We're going to go to our volume and we're going to start turning it up. What's the most we can get? All right, 5.2, 5.3. Let's go to our oscilloscope. Oscilloscope is still clean. All right, so we're starting to get a little dirty on the edges there at volume 31, 30, 29. It's cleaned out at 29. Let's see what our number is. So 5.29, 5.3. Now I want you to listen real close. You're hearing just a little bit of that whine. Let's bring it up and let's hear what it sounds like as it gets even more. Hear that noise? I heard that noise in another video. As we clip it out though, we're at 6.4 volts. Definitely unclean though. We don't want to see that. We want to see it clean. If we go back to volume 30, now remember it's cleaned to absolute full volume before I boosted the USB. Volume 30, we're getting cleaner. Volume 29 is clean. This just for the sake of it, let me turn that USB source level back down, back to 0. Let's take our radio all the way up. You'll see all the way up, our oscilloscope is clean and our voltage is over 5 volts. So they have beat the number they said at full volume and it's absolutely clean. I think that means they've done a great job inside their EQs, inside their filters, inside their source level adjustment to get us good clean output. So we're going to get well over 6.5 volts if it's going to be clipped and unclean. We actually saw just a second ago that we got a lot more than 5 volts by bringing the USB up some. But the idea is, are they telling us the truth on the box? This radio said 6 volts, it did 5. This radio said 5 volts, it did 5 and a little more. So if you're looking at your RCA outs, how clean they are, it looks like it's a pretty close matchup as far as those RCA outs. A little bit stronger to Soundstream, a little bit more output, a little bit more adjustment there. So clear winner here to me is the Soundstream radio. Number one, they didn't tell us it did 6. They said it did 5, which it absolutely did, and it did it very, very well with flying colors. Clean output with a little bit to spare. That's what we're looking for. All right, we're going to move on to our next test. The next one I find to be one of the most important. We're going to actually install it in a bike. That's what you've been waiting on. We're going to show you what it looks like in that fairing. Now, it's an old police bike, so my fairing doesn't look really good, but we're going to throw it in there. We're going to bolt it in, and we're going to compare the way it looks as well as how the radio actually functions. And the big one to me is thumb controls, because I think there's a very clear winner. I want to show you the difference between them. All right, so now is test number 5. We're going to look at the radio in a motorcycle. This is important. This is what you're going to be doing with it. Now, this is our 2014 police bike. We call it Project 50 here at Volunteer Audio. It's one of our demo bikes, and it's something we try just about everything in. Now, I will point out, this is an old police bike. It has an old wore-out fairing. There's 30,000 miles on it. Spent a lot of time in the sun, a lot of times outside, and our fairing is not absolutely perfect, as a lot of these old plastic fairings are a little warped. So this little gap you see at the bottom, you're going to see on both radios. It is the bike, it is not the radio. If you put this in a nice bike with a nice fairing, it's going to fit very well. I think from both manufacturers we've looked, they're built the exact same way. So no worries in that being an issue. But I want you to look at the display. We checked out before about the vibrance, about the brightness. It does not appear to be as bright as the V2 radio. Even in CarPlay, it seems like we have quite a bit, if you notice here, we have quite a bit of glare. Now I've got some really good lighting in here, and inside of CarPlay it appears to have a lot of glare. On the other sources it has a lot of glare. While riding down the road, that can be an issue because when the sun's over you, if there's a lot of glare, it's going to glare back at you. I want to try a couple tests while we have this here. First off, an important one is a glove test. We want to make sure that while wearing gloves, we can operate the radio. Now, I will tell you, if your gloves operate your cell phone, there's a good chance it's going to operate your radio, but a lot of people worry about this. So we want to go on here and we want to make sure that with a glove on, that we can operate the radio, and it does appear like that works. Now I've done this test with the V2 radio, but every time I don't do this test, people are gonna ask about it. So I wanted to show you with gloves on. These are just Harley gloves we bought at the local dealer. It's gonna work no problem. Now the side buttons, one thing I do notice is they're not very well illuminated. Now if we were comparing this to a Soundstream HD14 SI, the other Soundstream radio, it's gonna have brighter buttons. The factory radio also has brighter buttons. And we have the ability to change the color on those buttons with the SI. I don't see that in this radio, so no way to change that color. So I think in low lighting situations, it'll be easy to see, but in the sun, I think you're gonna lose those buttons. They're gonna be hard to see. Now let's talk about thumb controls. This is important. We wanna make sure they work well. Now this is using a different version of our Datalink Maestro. Now a lot of people have actually said, oh, I can't wait for the Diamond radio because they put the iDatalink Maestro module inside the radio. Now, I will tell you, it's not an MRR, it's not an MRR2, it is a in-between part. And I've seen that there's some limitations as to what it will do, and Brandon and Ronnie have assured me that once they feel like the part is right, they would put it inside of their radio. But for now, rather than delay it till they felt like the part worked 100%, they weren't gonna put it in their radio yet. And I see part of what they're talking about. So it does have some programmable outputs like the MRR2. And actually, if you buy the Soundstream V2 with the MRR2, you can actually program one of these buttons to do those outputs. So you can turn on things like LED lighting from a button on your handlebar, which is kind of neat. You can do that also with the Diamond radio. I think the Diamond radio has 6 outputs, whereas an MRR has 4. So quite a few outputs that can be programmed, and you can take any of the buttons like squelch or PTT. Some things you're not currently using can be programmed for that. So in normal iDatalink Maestro installs that we've been doing with the 14SI or the V2, we have the ability to program all of these thumb controls to do multiple functions. And the more functions the radio does, the better that is. For instance, I can program a button to do intercom on the V2, and I can press the button and talk from passenger to rider, and we can talk back and forth. It's cool to be able to do that, especially when you can do a long press versus a short press. So normally we're gonna have on all the ones that we've done before, we're gonna have volume up and down on our left bar, right and left is gonna change the track, pushing in on the home button is gonna change the source, holding in on the home button is gonna do mute. That's the way I've got this one kind of set up. But I was very limited. When I got to my right joystick, there was no option to program it to toggle across Apple CarPlay or Android Auto or any of the home screens. So while riding down the road, if you wanted to get to the EQ, and make an adjustment, you're gonna have to touch the screen. If you want to go through any of the settings menus, you're gonna have to touch the screen. But the most importantly of all, when you're in Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and we're in Apple CarPlay right now, if I try to toggle to go through these apps, it doesn't toggle. And actually, it does weird things like goes to gauges when it should be going through my CarPlay screen. So inside of CarPlay, I cannot go from artist to album or album to playlist or even Google Maps to Apple Maps to Pandora to SiriusXM. I can't do those changes. When I do a source change, it literally takes me out to a different source, and I have no way to toggle across CarPlay to go to a different source inside of it. So I think that's a huge limitation of the current Maestro integrated module that's in this radio. It would not allow me to program it. There wasn't even an option for it. So as easy as it was to program it in the radio, and it's nice not having a module in the fairing, we figured out there's room for the module in the fairing, and the current MRR and MRR2 give us amazing functionality inside Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on the SI. But as you're gonna see in a few minutes when we put our V2 in, it's also gonna give us the ability to scroll across all the pages, which we couldn't do in here. So let's see what these buttons are doing. So because they would not work that, they actually have it doing, I think, next song and previous song. They're kind of dead right now. I know if I go up, it goes to gauges. I know if I go to info, it goes to motorcycle. If I long press info, nothing. Squelch, up and down, doesn't seem to do anything. Seems to be very limited as to what we have. So we go over here to FM. Yeah, right and left are changing my FM channel. They're mirroring what the other side is doing. If I go down, it's also going down on channel. So it's like they didn't have the ability to make it do anything else, so they've got it where it does a lot of the same things. So even though we have this awesome Datalink Maestro capability, either the radio or the part, I'm not sure which one, is not working together to allow you to do all these other functions that we know we need to do. Riding down the road, we don't want to be touching the screen to do Apple CarPlay. We don't want to be touching the screen to go to our maps. We don't want to have to touch the screen to go out to other places. One other weird thing that I saw just in our testing, the back button actually just says car. So I'll tell you this, if I was to use any other name brand radio that has certified Apple CarPlay in it, that button is going to be their brand logo. So this tells me that, I don't know who Car is, but when you get certification, you get your own logo on here. And I'm afraid that this one, whether it is or is not, I can't say, but it's really, really weird the way this boots up, the fact that it's running an Android operating system, and the fact that it just says Car. Because we really, wouldn't that say Diamond? It should say Diamond, I would think. So to get back out of Apple and into the rest of the radio, you hit a button that says Car. At the very least, this is their first motorcycle radio. I think it should say motorcycle, not car. But thumb controls are very, very lacking, in my opinion. It basically mimics everything we could do with the Soundstream 14 Plus. We have track forward and backwards, we have volume up and down, we have mute, we have source. Now we do have the gauges in the info like the SI does, but differently. So it seems like there's a few pop-ups and things that might be missing. I'm gonna mess with it some more. Going to the settings, let's see here. I've got units. I have Maestro features. Let's see about alerts. All right, so we do have alerts for battery voltage and low fuel like the SI. Those are some things that I wanted to make sure it had. It probably won't bring these up until the engine's running. But the SI does all of this same information from Soundstream at a lower price point. And yet you can also go through that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto screens. And ever since they've added their wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto adapter to the SI packages, it's very well, pretty much the same features. So comparing this to the V2 though is what we're doing in this video. So I want to throw a V2 in. I want you to look at the display, the brightness. We're going to check out its handlebar controls. We're going to check out all the source options because a few other things I saw this radio is missing. I'll show you in the other one. We don't have headset communication. I didn't see anywhere in here that I could turn that on. I could change it. I couldn't pick where anything went. So we don't seem to have that. We also have this thing called rally mode built into the V2 where we can connect to other radios, which is really cool, and play the same song on multiple radios at the same time. It also does not have built-in navigation, so we have built-in nav inside the V2. So if you want to back up and look at it as a whole, we have a bigger, more vibrant screen. We have wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto that seem to work better and actually have the correct logos. We also have more output, much stronger internal amp, 3 times the power on the V2. And as we get into these other features, wireless headset communication, rally mode, built-in navigation, those things are all completely missing. But it really is important to me, the thumb controls, and I think not having that joystick work is a huge loss on this radio. But let's grab our V2, we'll throw it in, I'll show you how it works on it in comparison. So you can probably see the excitement in my face. I've been playing with this radio some more, and doing that comparison just really, really brings out just how awesome this radio is. I'm going to do the glove test real quick. So I've got my glove on. You're going to see it absolutely operates everything that it's supposed to, just as if I was doing it with my finger. So I can go from one thing to another, no problem. It is glove working also. Now that does come down to your gloves. Let's be very specific. If you buy gloves that won't operate your cell phone, they probably won't operate your radio. That's not the radio's fault. You bought some funky gloves. All right, so on top of that, I want to point out something. We got our Soundstream logo up here on our Apple CarPlay. And if you'll notice, that huge screen allows us to actually see 5 of our different options across, actually a total of 10, whereas the other radio only showed 8 when we were in CarPlay. So that bigger screen amounts to more scene, more map scene, and so on. Now our thumb controls, because we are using a Maestro, and this one I'm just using an MRR. I'm not using a more expensive module. With the MRR, I've got volume up and down as we would expect. Dual function, so I can hold it and go up fast. I can hold in it, it's going to mute it. So hold in it mutes it. I also have the ability to change through available sources in the radio, just by pressing in on it. But here's the big deal. This right joystick scrolls through our Apple CarPlay. So I can go to our music, I can go from there, and I can go up to things like our playlists and artists, and I can change all of this while riding down the road. I don't have to worry about touching the screen. So much safer, much better in my opinion to be able to use that. But let's go a step further. Let me go back out of here. Let's find that Soundstream icon and go into the radio. And you'll see I can also go across my radio screens. Isn't that cool? So I can actually pick different sources right here and I can go through those. So if I wanted to go down to headset communication and I wanted to go in and change what I was hearing on one of the headsets, I can do that while riding right from my thumb controls. I'm not limited to touch the screen all the time. That is huge when you're going down the road. Another cool feature, I think, not only do we have all these additional apps and things that the other radio wasn't capable of, like the headsets, like the built-in navigation, you can grab anything you want on this list, and this is really neat. Let's go back to our home screen. Let me remember what's up there. So I've got Apple, gauges, nav. How about I want to drop, I'm going to drop something else on this home screen. So I'm going to go to apps. I can customize this front page to anything I want it to be, which means I can take the things that I normally use and I can make them easily accessible from the home page. I think that's really awesome. All right, so you can customize this screen any way you want it, which is going to make it much easier while you're riding down the road to grab just what you want from here instead of having to go to the full apps list. But there's so many things that can be done, like rally mode. Another cool thing is you can do custom backgrounds. So we can actually go in the settings menu. We can change to the background of the radio to say anything we want it to be. Let's see here, we've got background wallpapers. You could load in, like we have, maybe a Harley Davidson background. You can also put any logo you want on a USB flash drive, plug it into the USB drive, and you can load it as your background. Darker backgrounds are going to look better on a bright day, so it's going to make it easier to see these white letters. Now, also, one other awesome thing that comes with this radio is a second USB. So V2 is going to come with a USB high charge. So you guys with your new phones that need that high amperage charger, it's going to come with that cable. The only USB you have on the Diamond is going to be the one to program the Maestro and then the factory USB port. So it's not going to do that high amperage charge either. So bigger screen, more vibrant, much better thumb controls that work through everything. We still have the ability to bring up things like motorcycle info. Now some of these things are going to change as time goes on. They're doing a few different layouts, and I'll give you, for instance, the next time you see us in one of these in motorcycle info, you're going to see gear selector is probably going to be gone in compass. Compass was something that Datalink had added in there, but I think there might be one bike that has the right ABS traction control system for compass to work properly. We don't need that. We have built-in nav. We have everything that we would need here to know where we're going without having to have a compass. Let's go out of here and bring up the navigation software. So built-in nav, built-in wireless CarPlay that definitely is certified to Soundstream, Android Auto that loads quickly and wireless, thumb controls that work so much better than what we've seen on any of the other radios that are on the market. The brightest screen available, the glare is awesome. It doesn't have hardly any glare in comparison. Just the high definition part of that display. There's nothing that I can think of. The higher output. We just listened to a song. The reason I was smiling when we started this section, we just listened to some music on it, and it sounded so much better with this radio. You can tout how much of a DSP the other one has, but with 10 watts versus 30, it's a huge improvement in the way that the audio sounds with no amp. The RCAs are clean. The EQ is still a 15 band. So much going on here. And I just want to back up and say it again. Volunteer Audio is an independent retailer. I don't work for Soundstream. I don't work for any of the brands we sell. We do sell them, but we can sell any brand. They don't pay us to do these videos. This is something we do on our own. But we are very, very particular about what we sell. We know that you have trust in us, and we don't want to lose that trust. So when I tell you that a radio is the best radio that's ever been made for your Harley, keep in mind, I've tested all the other ones. The factory GTS, the new Skyline one, and the new, anybody's got a Skyline radio will tell you they're a little buggy right now. There's no way you're going to say it's the best ever. The Diamond radio, the other manufacturer that came out with a radio, we've tested all of them. This by far beats them in just about every single way. And we're blown away with it. And there's no reason for me to bring in the other radio, tell you to buy it when it doesn't compare. And the price point is so close. And, you know, some people said it doesn't have a Maestro built in. Well, great. This Maestro does so much more. And as soon as the one that's built in does all the features, I'm sure there'll be a running change and we'll end up putting one in the radio. That's always been a plan once it works like it should. But we're not going to sell you something that doesn't work right and then let you figure it out later and tell you there's future updates coming that might make it work correctly. We're not going to put you through that. So I want to tell you right now, this was a video on how do they stack up. How do each one of these radios compare to each other? And we saw it from boot times, Soundstream won. When it came to vibrance, how awesome the display looked, how big it was, Soundstream was by far the winner. It came to wattage output. I mean, they didn't just beat them by a couple watts. We're talking 3 times the power that Diamond had, you know, half of what the GTS did again on top of that. We got to RCA voltage. It was stronger and cleaner. Even though it said it did less power, it still did more. Then we get the thumb controls and functionality of the radio. We have so many more features. Thumb controls work better. The radio is so much less buggy. That Android operating system, it ate one of my USB drives in the Diamond. We didn't show you that. It actually smoked it. It doesn't work anymore. I have no idea why, but we lost it trying to test the radio, and it just kept doing things that didn't make sense. So hopefully they get some software revisions out from Diamond. They make the radio work better. We don't wish them any bad at all. And I hope that they work through some of these other things and continue to move the industry forward and things get better. This wasn't to bash them. For a first try, they're doing pretty good. It's just hard when you've got a company like Soundstream that's had many, many years listening to their customers and tweaking and making it better and better and better. And this is the culmination of several years worth of work. Brandon, you did great. Ronnie, you did a good job as well. I think that this radio is awesome. We're proud to have it at Volunteer Audio. And you as a customer that's watching, I think you can see there's no comparison between it and any other radio currently available. It'll be what we sell. It'll be what most people buy until something better comes along. I think they've set the bar pretty darn high. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions about the radio test you want to do, we haven't done, and I got a few more things I want to show you. We'll do them in future videos. This was more of a comparison than just a V2 test. I want to show you those, so definitely subscribe to Volunteer Audio. Follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you'll see those videos when they come out. Comment below if there's something else you want to see about the radio you want us to do. I've checked out your other stuff. Yes, this radio will play FLAC files. Some of you have asked that. We're working on an ability on the built-in nav to load some of those GPX files. It doesn't do it yet, but they're working through, can they do it? They're working on it hard, so we may see that as a future option as well. They're listening, they're taking notes, and anything they can do to make it better, they're doing it. If you want something said or seen, post it down below so I can check it out. I'll answer those questions, and maybe we can do a video on it. We'll show you here at Volunteer Audio how it works out in the radio. Thank you so much for watching. Call us at 1-844-30-AUDIO if you have questions about upgrading the audio in your Harley. We'd love to talk to you, our knowledgeable sales and tech team. It's real people. You're not going to call somewhere in India. You're going to get people right here at Volunteer Audio. We're going to discuss what you're wanting to do, and we're going to help you make those right decisions. From all of our knowledge, from all of our testing, we're going to guide you in the right direction. Thank you. Check out volunteeraudio.com to see all the packages. To pre-order the V2 radio, if you want this radio, it is available right now for pre-order. Supposedly going to ship somewhere toward the end of May, early June. We still got a few more left for pre-order, so if you want to get on that, you can buy them at volunteeraudio.com, and you'll be one of the first to have the best radio ever made for your Harley. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, God bless.